Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into a world where tea was hot, conversation was currency, and silence was only acceptable if you could do needlepoint while maintaining perfect posture. You've taken a job that doesn't involve coal dust, bloodletting, or sweeping horse manure. No, this one requires a soft voice, soft hands, and even softer opinions. You're a lady's companion, a paid presence for the lonely upper-class widow, the nervous young debutante, or the mildly tyrannical baroness who needs someone to agree with her about the superiority of English marmalade. Your job? Read aloud, play the pianoforte, nod at the right moments, and never, ever win at whist unless instructed. Alright, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe. But only if your heart says yes. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You arrive at the household of Lady Eugenia Hawthorne just before the second tea of the day. Her townhouse smells like rosewater, lemon cakes, and, somewhere faintly beneath it all, the sting of lavender polish worked into walnut balustrades. Her butler says nothing as he takes your bonnet, and you resist the urge to curtsy to a side table out of nerves. Lady Eugenia is already seated, perched like a porcelain hawk in a cream armchair so stiff it might protest if anyone actually leaned back in it. She is dressed in dove-grey silk, her hair a white puff of precision, and she regards you through spectacles that do not magnify, but somehow still judge. "Can you play Schubert?" she asks, not looking up from her embroidery. You nod. She gestures toward the pianoforte in the corner with the slight motion of 2 fingers, as though directing a hound. The music is easy enough, slower than what you're used to, and she doesn't seem to care if you fumble. In fact, she doesn't seem to care at all. This, you quickly learn, is part of the job. You're not here to impress. You're here to exist pleasantly. A breathing, educated piece of furniture that knows when to speak and when to blend into the wallpaper. Some afternoons are spent reading aloud. Today it's Tennyson. You read The Lady of Shalott, with all the melancholy grace you can summon while she sips tea and occasionally hums disapprovingly. Once, she interrupts with, "No need to sound so tragic, dear. It's only poetry." Then she yawns. You learn that her late husband, Major Hawthorne, liked his cigars imported and his dogs obedient. She mentions him daily, usually with a tone that dances between grief and glee. You nod at the appropriate moments and smile when she mocks his boots. The best moment of the day is the window hour, between 4 and 5, when she takes her rest and you're allowed to sit quietly by the window with your own thoughts, and a book she'll never ask about. You always pick something slightly below your reading level, just in case she inquires. You get 1 scone with jam, no butter, no second cup unless she offers. And yet, there's something oddly peaceful in the rhythm of this work. The restraint, the silence padded with floral upholstery, the sound of polished shoes on soft carpet. What you're not supposed to know, but of course you do, is that some companions were once aristocratic daughters themselves, their families fallen from grace after a bad investment or a scandal involving imported sardines. It's a genteel kind of exile, and Lady Eugenia never asks about your background, which is both a courtesy and a command not to bring it up. You're not a maid, you're not family, you're something in between, a ghost with a salary. Still, it's better than being a governess. At least no one expects you to teach Latin or discipline children with sticks. And there are worse things in Victorian Britain than being paid to play piano and say, "Yes, Lady Eugenia, I quite agree." The worst part? Every once in a while she'll smile at you, just slightly, and you'll feel like you've passed a test you didn't know you were taking. The days fall into a slow, perfumed rhythm. Mornings with the papers, delivered still damp with fog, and afternoons filled with literature that must never be too modern, too foreign, or too French. You quickly learn that even your reading accent matters. One slip into a regional vowel, and Lady Eugenia's eyebrow arches like the Tower Bridge mid-lift. You keep your tone neutral, genteel, and not too enthusiastic. A lady's companion must never upstage the lady. Sometimes she has visitors, other widows, aging colonels, a cousin who smells faintly of mothballs and regret. During these encounters, your job is to blend into the furniture with grace. You pour tea, you serve biscuits, and when they mention the war, or the Queen's digestion, or the cost of French wallpaper, you nod without committing to an opinion. You're not invisible, but you're not meant to shine. Of course, not every lady's companion has it so easy. You've heard whispers at the circulating library. Some companions must share rooms with their employers. Some are tasked with darning stockings or dealing with grown children who've failed at marriage. One woman was forced to play the harp nightly, while her employer practiced spiritual seances in the drawing room. You, at least, only have to endure the occasional poem about hedgerows. The job pays little, barely enough for a new pair of gloves each season, but it comes with housing, meals, and the dignity of being able to say you do respectable work. In a society where a single woman of a certain age could so easily slide into scandal just by existing, that is no small thing. You once dreamed of being a teacher or a poet or secretly a stage actress. But such paths are fraught with social peril unless your uncle's in Parliament or your father owns a brewery. Being a companion, it's the middle path, the safe one, respectable, invisible, endurable. Every Thursday is embroidery day. Lady Eugenia does cross-stitch. You pretend to work on the same rose pattern sampler for 6 months. She doesn't notice, or if she does, she approves of your strategic laziness. Sometimes, when she dozes in her chair and you glance up at the ticking mantel clock, you wonder who will be your companion when you're old. You picture a younger woman nodding politely as you rant about modern novels and how no one brews tea properly anymore. But that's a long way off. For now, you rise when the clock chimes 5 and quietly collect your things. You say, "Good evening, Lady Eugenia," and she says, "Yes, yes, off you go," as if she's just realised you were there at all. Outside, the street lamps flicker to life. You pass a chimney sweep boy with soot on his nose, a butcher boy balancing kidneys in brown paper, and 2 policemen too busy talking to notice the pickpocket brushing past. You walk home in low boots and silence, breathing in the scent of coal smoke and horse dung and autumn leaves. The streets are loud again, full of life and noise and everything your workday isn't. And for a moment just before you reach the boarding house, you smile. Because while the world around you spins in soot and scandal, you've carved out your own quiet space. A paid shadow, a listener, a presence, a lady's companion, and in Victorian Britain that's more freedom than many ever get. The sign outside the narrow brick townhouse reads Dr. Archibald Fenwick, phrenologist, mind revealed through the skull, in flaking gold paint. You stand before it with your gloves tucked nervously under one arm, wondering how much nonsense you'll have to say today to earn your pay. Then you remember, you're not the patient, you're the assistant, or depending on the client, the expert. The Victorian public has a peculiar appetite for certainty about character, destiny, intelligence, and phrenology. It offers just that, all wrapped up in a polished ivory model of the human head, with neat little regions labelled amativeness, firmness, and cautiousness, like moral cartography. You step inside and are immediately greeted by the scent of chalk dust, pipe smoke, and lemon polish. The room is lined with glass jars, skulls, yes, but also models, diagrams, and even a shelf of plaster casts from supposedly great men. You're told one of them belonged to a bishop, another, quietly, to a convicted pickpocket. You've learned to speak the language. When a nervous young man asks if he's suited for banking, you gently run your fingers along the ridge above his ear and murmur, Well-developed acquisitiveness, sir. He beams. Of course he's meant for finance. When a mother brings in her daughter, round-eyed, curls too tight, manners too practiced, you find the mildest bumps and say, strong sense of order and sympathy, ideal for child-rearing or composition. The mother nods, proud and relieved. You never say anything cruel. That's Dr. Fenwick's job if it comes to it. He once told a butcher he lacked moral restraint and shouldn't be trusted around sausage girls. That client didn't return. You do your best to steer the readings with grace. After all, most people just want reassurance. They want to be told they were born good, or special, or justified in their choices. The real artistry lies in reading the face, not the skull. Still, there are believers. Some carry tiny skull charts in their breast pockets. One elderly gentleman brings his phrenology calipers and insists on double-checking your measurements. You let him. Then you gently adjust his reading to match the life he's already led. It's not exactly fraud. More like guided interpretation. You've learned to keep a straight face during odd requests. One man asked if his bumps meant he could become a novelist. Another wanted to know if he should propose marriage. A woman once asked, blushing furiously, if phrenology could determine whether her husband's passion had declined due to diet or moral decay. Dr. Fenwick answered that one himself, with a surprisingly long monologue about melon consumption. At public lectures, you're the one who fetches the skulls, holds the diagrams, and occasionally volunteers to have your own head examined. You've practiced the surprised but pleased face when the doctor announces your superior. Ideality. It's performance, yes, but so is half the science of the day. And the Victorians, they adore a performance dressed up in logic. Your favourite part of the day is polishing the ivory skulls in the back room. There's one shaped like a child's head, covered in inked labels that have begun to fade. Destructiveness, hope, secretiveness. You trace the grooves with a cloth and imagine what sort of person that head once belonged to, if anyone at all. You suspect some of the models are entirely made up, but it hardly matters, because in this business, as in many others, the truth is often less important than the presentation. There are moments, quiet, ridiculous moments, when you almost believe it yourself. Like when a well-dressed widow comes in, convinced her second husband was predisposed to infidelity because of an odd bump on his occipital lobe. She places a tiny bronze bust on the table, supposedly cast from his actual skull. You're not sure if it's real, or if she had it made after the funeral out of sheer Victorian drama. Either way, you nod solemnly and trace the spot in question, murmuring, indeed, prominent amativeness, combined with low conscientiousness, it may have expressed itself unpredictably. She gasps as if you've conjured his ghost. Of course, phrenology has its critics. A few newspapers call it a parlour trick, and real physicians, those working in hospitals elbows deep in actual anatomy, tend to scoff. But that doesn't matter much to Dr. Fenwick's clientele. They're not looking for diagnosis, they're looking for identity. And in a world where people are measured by class, coin and corset, the idea that your skull could tell a hidden truth, that's intoxicating. Sometimes Dr. Fenwick hosts private readings for fashionable parties. You're instructed to dress neatly, carry the lacquered calipers, and refer to everyone as Madam or Sir, no matter how many times they call you boy or girl. In these drawing rooms, surrounded by velvet and hors d'oeuvres, you gently measure the bumps of society's most bored and restless minds. And the most peculiar request comes from a couple who wants their baby's head examined for signs of genius. The child is 5 months old, bald, and deeply unimpressed by your presence. You touch the soft crown gently and say something about early perceptiveness. The mother weeps with joy. The father tips you a shilling. The baby burps. There's a shelf in the back room full of outdated phrenology books, handwritten notes scribbled in the margins, underlined passages about the link between skull shape and morality. Some of it makes you wince, especially the parts that claim certain racial types have lower reasoning ability. You don't mention those when clients are around. Dr. Fennick pretends not to notice. You suspect that's why he hires you, not because you believe it, but because you can deliver it politely. You've learned to navigate the gap between what phrenology says and what people want it to mean. You tell the baker he has the hands of a craftsman. You tell the school teacher she has a finely developed benevolence. You once told a man with a terrifying scowl that he possessed a hidden sense of humour. He laughed for the first time in what felt like years. And you? You've never had your own skull read. You think about it sometimes. But maybe it's better not to know, or better yet, to pretend you do. You can always say your veneration bump is unusually large, or your secretiveness impressively underdeveloped, hence your honesty. At the end of each day, you dust the busts, tidy the leaflets, and wonder how long the public's love affair with head measuring will last. But for now, it pays the rent. And in Victorian Britain, that's more than enough to make belief optional. You step out into the gaslighted street, carry a notebook under your arm and adjust your gloves. No one knows your secrets, not even your skull. The back room smells faintly of bird. Not the pleasant chirpy kind, but the dusty, malted, slightly gamey scent of feathers that have long lost their owners. You sneeze. Again. You're standing at your small workbench, which isn't really a bench but the end of a repurposed dining table, covered in spools of thread, snippets of twine, wire loops, and a nest-like tangle of plumage. Welcome to your new profession, feather duster maker. It's more dignified than it sounds. At least that's what you keep telling yourself. Feather dusters are essential tools in every well-kept Victorian home, especially for those with tall ceilings and expensive chandeliers. Every lady's maid worth her salt uses one to sweep away coal dust, cobwebs, and the vague suggestion of poverty, and someone has to make them. You started apprenticing under a Mrs. Godfrey, a formidable woman with stiff boots and fingers like chicken bones. She knows every feather by touch alone. Goose for softness, ostrich for flair, rooster for stiffness, and peacock when the client wants to feel exotic. Never use swan, she warned on your first day, unless you enjoy being shouted at by rich people. The work is fiddly. First you sort feathers by length and colour. Some arrive still half attached to their former owners, and it's your job to gently pluck them clean. No one wants a duster with downy tufts or a hint of, well, origin. Then comes bundling, selecting just the right number of inner, middle and outer feathers for the desired puff. The finest dusters are full and fluffy, their shafts wired together with near-invisible twine, wrapped with black velvet tape at the handle. A brass cap finishes the end, sometimes engraved if the buyer is particularly fancy. These go to Kensington, or Parliament, or Lady Someone or Other with a monkey and a footman. Yours at first go to servants' halls, but you're learning. Your hands smell of starch, glue and wood polish. Your nails are perpetually rimmed with dust, and you've developed a peculiar sensitivity to the sound of feathers rustling. Now you can tell if one's cracked just by the way it brushes your sleeve. It's quiet work. No customers shouting. No one breathing down your neck. Just the occasional visit from Mrs. Godfrey, who inspects your bundles like a hawk judging a nest, and either nods silently or rips the whole thing apart with a single flick. Try again. The left wing's heavier than the right. Still, you find a kind of peace in the symmetry. The way goose feathers naturally curve, how rooster quills bite a little more into the binding. There's something satisfying in creating order from scattered fluff. You once asked Mrs. Godfrey how she got into the trade. She looked up from her wire spool, blinked and said, My mother made parasols. I made the leftover bits into brushes. The brushes paid better. It wasn't exactly the inspiring tale you hoped for, but it was honest. Every few days, a boy from the millinery next door pops into trade feathers. He always smells faintly of perfume and starch. One time he offered you a bundle of jet-black ostrich plumes in exchange for 3 good turkey wing bristles. You bartered like a sailor. You won. The duster you made from those plumes sold the next morning. Mrs. Godfrey didn't say anything, but she let you work at the front table that day, closer to the window, closer to respectability. When your fingers grow tired from tying, you switch to trimming. Each duster gets a haircut, snipping fly-away filaments, straightening the edges so that the whole thing looks composed, uniform, elegant, like it was grown that way on some magical symmetrical bird. You've developed a little ritual. Tap the base twice, rotate it once, trim clockwise. That way, even if the morning's been all chaos, chickens tangled in string, a delivery of turkey feathers that smell suspiciously like yesterday's stew, you can still feel like something in your world is neat. Sometimes rich ladies come in themselves. They call you girl, even if you're 25, and ask questions like, "Do you have anything in lavender ostrich?" Or, "Would this match the drawing room sky blue palette?" One even brought a piece of curtain fabric to compare hues. You held up a bundle of pale mauve goose feathers, and she said, close enough," before paying with an ivory-tipped cane and leaving. No thank you, no goodbye. But it was your first sale above the servants' floor. You keep the receipt in your apron pocket for a week before finally tossing it. The shop itself is nothing grand. A narrow bay window, a painted sign that simply says Featherwares in fading script. But once inside, it's a sea of softness. Ceiling hooks draped with sample dusters, bouquets of plumes hanging like floral arrangements, boxes of bundled feathers tied in brown twine. It's quieter than the seamstress shops, warmer than the blacksmiths, and a great deal less grim than the glue works across the alley, where you once saw a man's boot melt slightly into the floor. You've even begun to experiment. A tiny duster made entirely from pheasant feathers, another with a striped handle made of wrapped silk thread. Mrs. Godfrey raises an eyebrow at your flourishes but doesn't forbid them. Not yet. One day, a gentleman with soft hands and a soft voice comes in asking for a gift duster. Something unique, something elegant. You show him your pheasant creation and he smiles. "I'll take it," he says. "My sister is quite the cleaning enthusiast." That may or may not be true, but he leaves a silver coin heavier than expected. You tuck it away, just in case. And then there are the fringe clients. One duster, made of red-tipped rooster feathers, ends up being purchased by a magician. He claims he uses it to disappear smoke. Another is sent by post to a theatre in Manchester, meant for a burlesque dancer known as Lulu, La Plume. You don't ask questions, but you do smile more when you pack the box. You realise eventually that your work goes places you'll never see. You imagine your dusters brushing against marble mantles, stage curtains, velvet footstools, and the occasional scandalous boudoir. It's oddly comforting. Because even though your name is never known, your craft moves through the world like a hush, quiet, graceful, useful. And one day, years from now, some other young woman might hold one of your dusters in her hands and feel, just for a moment, that the world can be soft, even in Victorian Britain. The first thing you learn is this: never underestimate a wet wool overcoat, especially when it's draped over your shoulder, still dripping from a week of fog, and you're expected to hoist it onto the wooden roller without soaking the rest of the laundry. You're now a mangle woman, a walking lever, a human pulley, a domestic technician with forearms like braided rope. It's not glamorous, and it's certainly not clean, but it pays better than scrubbing floors, You don't have to make polite conversation while doing it. The mangle itself is a beast. A hulking contraption of cast iron and wood, it looks like something that could flatten a carriage wheel if it had a mind to. 2 large rollers sit in parallel, turned by a heavy hand crank. Your job is to feed sopping wet sheets, shirts, underthings, petticoats, and whatever else the week's wash has birthed through the rollers, carefully, smoothly. No wrinkles, no folds, no fingers caught. There's a rhythm to it. Lift, feed, crank, pull. The crank is heavier than it looks, and the rollers squeak just slightly out of sync, always right before they catch a stubborn corner of flannel. Your workspace is a shared laundry room behind a row of workers' cottages. It's warm from the stove in winter, sticky in summer, and always humming with gossip. Most of the other mangle women are older than you. Some are widows. A few are simply quiet souls who prefer wringing linens to wringing necks. Every Monday is chaos. Laundry arrives in great heaving baskets smelling of soap, smoke, and humanity. You take what you're given, check it for hidden pins, and start cranking. Tuesday is quieter. That's when you remangle the damp things that were folded too soon or pressed too carelessly. The woman 2 stations over once tried to mangle an oilcloth apron and nearly shattered the handle. You've never let her forget it. There's pride in doing it well. You can tell a seasoned mangle woman by her stance, feet apart, elbows loose, shoulder dipped just so. It's a dance with machinery, and if you're good at it, the garments come out smoother than a butler's lie. A good pressing means fewer blisters for the ironing girls, fewer scowls from the employers, and, if you're lucky, a few extra coins slipped into the seams of next week's bundle. Sometimes people send in strange things. A lace corset stained with red wine, a handkerchief embroidered with initials that don't match the laundry list. Once, you mangled a pair of silk trousers so sheer they nearly floated off the roller. You said nothing. Everyone said nothing. The room held its breath and then exhaled into laughter. But the work is hard. Your back aches before noon. Your wrists swell by Friday. The skin on your palms becomes thick, calloused, and often smells faintly of lye. Still it's yours, your strength, your rhythm, your handle to turn. And in a city where women are so often reduced to decoration or dependency, being needed for sheer muscle feels, oddly, dignified. Even if no one ever sees your name sewn into a garment, they see your work. They feel it, pressed into every sleeve, every sheet, every fold. By Wednesday, your arms are sore in that specific humming way that feels like both warning and triumph. The ache means you've survived the week so far. It also means you still have 2 more days before you can sit in peace without hearing the phantom creak of rollers in your ears. The mangle, of course, has a personality. Yours is slightly tilted to the left. The crank sticks if you pause too long between turns. It groans on humid days, and once, just once, it spat out a man's trousers with such force they landed in someone's stew pot across the lane. Mrs. Callahan never let you forget it. You've grown protective of your machine. When the supervisor suggests oiling the rollers, you mutter, "Not too much," under your breath like a warning. Too much oil and the fabrics slip. Not enough, and your shoulder gets pulled out of alignment again, like last March. The other women share your habits. Rosie hums hymns to keep time. Agatha talks to the mangle, as though it's her third husband, unpredictable, loud, but dependable enough when fed properly. Someone even carved a face into the crank once, 2 dots for eyes and a line for a mouth. You've rubbed it smooth with years of use. Sometimes you dream of being replaced. Not you, personally, but your job. A steam mangle, maybe. Automatic. Efficient. Noiseless. The papers talk of such things in the laundry rooms of the wealthy, but here, in the working-class alleys of Camden, Nothing replaces the human crank. Not yet. In your best weeks, you earn enough to buy little luxuries. A spool of ribbon, a pot of rose pomade, a second-hand paperback novel with the corners folded in. You read it late at night by candlelight, your arms draped over the windowsill to cool. You've also learned to recognise your own work in the world. At church, when the vicar's surplice looks especially crisp, you nudge the girl beside you. That's mine. When you pass the baker's wife and see her apron lying perfectly flat against her middle, you feel a flicker of quiet satisfaction. No one claps for a well-mangled sheet, but it's there, quietly upholding the illusion of order. Smooth linen, unwrinkled seams, the dignity of cleanliness, all built on the quiet crank of your hands. Your mother used to say that folding laundry was folding dignity. You didn't understand her until now. And then there are the stories that ride in with the wash. You find notes sewn into waistbands, coded messages, initials stitched over, a scrap of poetry tucked inside a blouse. Once, unbelievably, a pressed violet between two petticoats, its colour barely faded. You don't ask questions, but you remember. And so, you keep turning the crank, not for glory, not for fame, but because somewhere, someone will put on a freshly smoothed collar, tomorrow morning walk confidently into their day and feel just a little bit sharper, never knowing that it was you who made it so. In this city of steam, soot and sweat, you are the silent guardian of straight lines. And the world, as ridiculous as it is, needs straight lines. The air in the workshop is thick with steam and the faint scent of scorched wool. Somewhere a kettle hisses. Somewhere else someone curses in muffled tones as a wisp of vapour escapes too soon and burns an ungloved hand. You're standing before a long wooden work table, in a room that feels more like a sauna than a studio, surrounded by bowed shelves stacked with felt, straw, silk ribbon and wooden forms. Today, like every day, you are a hat blocker. If hats are the crown of the Victorian gentleman, then you're the one making sure the crown doesn't sag, tilt, or make its owner look like a softened cheese. Your tools are simple, but ancient in feeling. A kettle, a padded mallet, curved wooden blocks in every imaginable head shape, a measuring tape, a pair of glove-thick hands, and the patience of a saint. The job begins with steam, always steam. You hold the raw, shapeless felt above the mouth of the kettle until it softens into obedience. It grows limp, like wet dough. That's when you stretch it, fast but even, over the wooden block that matches the customer's head size and desired style. Top hat, bowler, Homburg, or the occasional eccentric trilby. You pull it tight, like skin over bone. You beat it lightly into shape. Then you pin, bind, and leave it to dry, stiffening slowly into its permanent personality. You've seen 1,000 hats pass through your hands, and yet no two are ever quite the same. Some tilt forward, aggressive. Others slope back with quiet mischief. The hat is the last mask a man puts on before entering the world, and you are the quiet sculptor behind it. You once blocked a hat for a parliamentarian whose head was so perfectly round, you measured it twice just to be sure. Another time, a young actor asked for a top hat, with a bit of villainy. You gave the crown a subtle forward lean. He sent you a ticket to his next performance. Then there was the gentleman who insisted his hat be just slightly taller than his rivals. You added half an inch, and never told him. Some days you're trusted with refurbishing instead of shaping. That's when the real puzzle begins. How to restore a crushed hat from a drunken opera exit. How to rescue a bowler left too close to the hearth. You iron, restretch, patch the lining, polish the band, and send it out looking better than it ever did new. There's pride in being invisible in this work. If you've done it well, no one notices. The hat simply fits perfectly. It becomes part of the wearer's silhouette, their stride, their social armour. But oh, when it goes wrong, you've heard stories. One bad blocking and a man's reputation shifts. Too short a crown and he's mocked as provincial. Too wide a brim and he's labelled flashy. You carry that weight every time you reach for the kettle. Your apron is permanently stained with sweat and dye. The skin of your thumbs is tough from pinning, but your eye is sharp. You can glance at a man across the street and know his size, his style, and, if you're feeling cheeky, his marital status, just from the condition of his hat. It's more than millinery, it's silent storytelling, and you're fluent. By midweek, your hands carry the memory of every block they've touched. Smooth cedar domes, ridged brims, and the occasional custom mould with a peculiar ridge at the temple, left over from an old injury, a childhood fall, or a lifetime of wearing hats too tight. You've learned to keep notes, though not on paper. You remember the man with the sour breath and silk gloves who requested a hat that commands but doesn't shout. You gave him a bowler with a firm crease and a brim just shy of arrogant. You remember the theatre manager whose top hat always drooped at the crown because he stored it under a leaky window. You fixed it twice before realising he liked the dent, called it artful. And then there's the one you'll never forget. A tall, soft-spoken gentleman who walked in with a ruined boater and a telegram in his coat. He didn't say much, but you could tell the hat had belonged to someone else, someone gone. You didn't ask. You simply shaped it anew, sanding the brim smooth, steaming it gently, binding the band in black. He paid in silence, left with a nod. There are stories folded into every sweatband. Every hat blocked in this room has somewhere to go. Weddings, funerals, promotions, affairs, duels, debuts, disappearances. You never see what happens after. You only send the hat out like a sealed envelope and hope the message is received. Sometimes you get requests you don't understand. I need something that looks respectable, but not too respectable. Or, make me a hat that looks like I belong in the room, even if I don't say a word. You translate as best you can. A slight angle, a firmer line, a deeper grey. You've learned that men rarely know how to say what they want, but they feel it when they put the hat on. The mirror tells them when you've succeeded, and there's always that moment. The tilt of the head, the flick of the brim, the whisper of satisfaction. When they look at themselves and believe the story you've written for them in felt and steam. It's rare, but when it happens, it feels like applause. You've blocked hats for magistrates, barkeeps, sailors and schoolboys, for lovers trying to impress, for scoundrels trying to reform, for men trying to disappear, and others trying to be remembered. No one remembers you, of course, but sometimes, when you walk down the street and spot a hat that sits just so, tapered, precise, proud, you can't help but grin. That was yours, and though your name isn't stitched into the lining, your touch remains. Quiet, permanent. In a world obsessed with appearances, you shape the crown they wear, and no one ever thinks to bow to the hand behind the brim. You begin each evening with a ladder, a flame, and a race against darkness. The gaslights don't wait. As soon as the sun slips behind the chimney-stack rooftops of London, the city starts to vanish into soot and shadow. That's your cue. You hoist your pole, tighten your scarf, and begin your route. You're a lantern lighter, not the kind who stands in grand lobbies with brass buttons and a smile. No, you're out on the streets, cold, cobbled, often damp, always slightly dangerous. Your job is simple in theory. Light each of the city's gas lamps before night falls, then return at dawn to extinguish them. Simple until it isn't. Each lamp is perched atop an iron post some 10 feet in the air. You carry a pole with a small flame at the tip, fed by oil and stubbornness, and use it to reach up, press the trigger lever, and spark the gasolight with a breath of fire. It flares softly, a warm blue halo blooming inside the glass. Then you move on. There are dozens to reach before full dark. You walk fast. The route never changes. Baker Street, Langham Place, all the way down toward the riverside fog. You know every crack in the pavement, every place where the stone shifts underfoot, every shortcut through alley and mews. The lamps themselves have personalities. Some flicker on obediently. Others hiss, stutter, demand a second attempt. There's one on Broadwick Street that always flares too bright and nearly singed your eyebrow once. You call it the Dragon. Children sometimes follow you, mimicking your stride, pretending their walking sticks are torches too. You let them, unless they get underfoot. Not everyone's friendly. Some drunks shout. A few rough boys once tried to snatch your pole and light a pub sign ablaze. You got it back eventually. They ran laughing into the dark, and you cursed them in your head with every word your grandmother used to scold the chickens. Still, most people ignore you entirely. You light their way, and they never see your face. Sometimes, you pause just a moment longer at the corner lamps, looking down at the street below. The gaslight softens everything. The grime seems golden, the smoke gentler. Couples walk closer together. A woman adjusts her hatpin in the reflected glow. You are the silent prologue to every Victorian evening. Once, on a clear night, you watched a man propose beneath your lamp. She said yes. They kissed. Then he looked up and nodded to you. You nodded back. Of course, not every night is sweet. Rain turns the iron ladder slippery. Fog makes the lamps harder to find. Wind tries to snuff your flame before it can kiss the gas awake. On bad nights, you return soaked, bruised, and soot-streaked, your arms trembling from holding the pole too high for too long. But the city is safer, warmer, more alive when the lamps are lit. And knowing you made that happen, quietly, without applause, is enough. Morning arrives before the sun. You're already awake, scarf damp with dew, boots still damp from the night before. The street is ghostly, grey fog curling between houses, shopkeepers yawning as they unlatch doors, a cat stalking something invisible beneath a wagon. Now, it's time for the second half of your job, extinguishing. You walk the same route in reverse, the same pole in hand, but instead of fire, now you carry absence. You reach up with the hooked end of your tool, press the little lever that stops the flow of gas, and watch each lamp blink out one by one. The city yawns in its sleep as you dim the stars it borrowed for the night. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of hush. Last night you brought warmth and vision. This morning you gently return the city to daylight, one lamp at a time. And yet, despite doing this for years, you still notice the strange beauty of it. How a gaslight dies like a sigh. How pigeons don't stir until the fourth lamp on Great Marlborough Street. How chimney smoke begins to curl upward just as you reach the halfway mark. One morning you find someone waiting beneath the lamp. A young man with a leather satchel, nervously checking his pocket watch. "First day at the bank," he says, not really to you. You nod, extinguish the flame and say, "Good light to you." He looks surprised, smiles, then walks into the fog. You wonder sometimes if the lamps remember you. Probably not, but there are marks, small nicks in the posts from your hook, the faint soot on your gloves that only you can trace from week to week. This is your invisible trail through the city, your signature. Of course, progress waits for no one. There's talk of electric lighting now, arcs of current, filaments and bulbs. Some streets have already converted. Your friend Thomas, who used to cover the east side, lost his route entirely when they rewired the mains. Now he sells matches from a box on Oxford Street. You haven't said it aloud, but you know. One day your ladder will stay in the corner. Your pole will gather dust, the lamps will glow without you, but for now, this morning, you're still needed. You turn the final corner, reach the last lamp, and lift your pole one last time. The flame inside flutters once, like it knows the day is here. Then it goes out. The silence is full. You lower the pole, rest it against your shoulder, and in the quiet between the extinguishing and the waking world, you breathe in the sweet, strange honour of your work. Not every job lets you hold back the dark, but yours does. Twice a day. It's not even dawn yet, but you're already walking. Down narrow alleys where the cobblestones still sweat from the night. Past houses where curtains stir with sleepers who trust you more than they know. In one hand you carry a long, slender stick. In the other, a pocket watch, ticking like a heartbeat. You are a knocker-up, and it's your job to wake up the city. Not with alarm bells, not with roosters, and certainly not with clocks. Those are expensive, temperamental things reserved for bankers and barristers. No, you wake people the old-fashioned way, with a tap on the window pane. Or, if you're feeling cheeky, a pea-shooter aimed squarely at the glass. You have a list in your head. Addresses, names, times. Mr. Collins at 4:45 a.m. sharp for his shift at the foundry. The Stevens twins at 5:10 for the bakery. Mrs. Kettering at 5:55 because she needs exactly 15 minutes to lace up no more no less. You arrive at each building like a phantom. Raise your pole and tap, tap, tap at the third-floor window, right under the left-hand shutter. Sometimes they wave, sometimes they grumble. Once Mr. Collins fell back asleep and blamed you for his lateness. You tapped twice the next day. Harder. It's quiet work and surprisingly delicate. Too soft and they'll sleep through it. Too loud and you'll wake the baby or worse, the landlord. Some windows have tricky spots that don't carry sound. Some are blocked by curtains. One woman installed lace so thick you had to resort to tapping the drain pipe instead. And the pea-shooter, it's not a toy, it's a tactical tool. You learned that after the 7th floor family moved in on Pudding Lane. No ladder in the world was going to reach that far. So now you carry a little pouch of dried peas, clean, reusable, and surprisingly effective. You've developed a remarkable aim. Your job makes you invisible in the daylight. No one sees you by noon. They forget. They assume they woke naturally by instinct or luck or some internal sense of duty. But it was you. It's always been you. Once, a man tried to invent a system of bells and pulleys to replace your service. It tangled. The cat got stuck in it. You were back by the next morning. Your shoes wear out faster than anything else. The soles go soft from the miles. You tried boots once, but they made too much noise on the stones. Now you wear soft-heeled shoes and carry a pencil to note any new requests. Knock on the frame, not the glass. Or add 5 minutes on Fridays. It's not glamorous, but it matters. Because you're not just waking people. You're keeping promises. Promises to bakers, butchers, clerks and chimney sweeps. Promises whispered in tired voices the night before. Get me up, no matter what. And you do. Your route weaves through half the waking world. You know which homes creak before their owners do, which windows fog up from kettles just starting to boil, and which doors will open exactly 3 seconds after your knock, like they've been waiting for it in their dreams. You never linger, never greet. That's not part of the deal. A proper knocker-up is a whisper, not a conversation. Still, there are the exceptions. Like the young apprentice on Barley Row who leaves you a biscuit on Tuesdays, always wrapped in brown paper, always still warm. He never says anything, but the biscuit always has a single raisin, like a signature. Or the coal man who once invited you in for tea after a snowstorm. His hands were black to the elbows and the tea was so strong it could have revived the dead, but it warmed your bones and your pride. Then there's the couple in the corner house. The retired couple, no jobs to go to, but every morning just before 6 you tap their window anyway. And every morning the curtain twitches and a hand waves, out of habit, out of gratitude, out of something older than alarms. The city has its own heartbeat at this hour. Market carts rumble into place, milk bottles clink, doors creak open like reluctant eyelids. You pass a lamplighter going the other direction, nodding in mutual respect. You both belong to the invisible class, guardians of transition, masters of thresholds. One morning a girl stops you mid-route, maybe 12 years old, hair in braids. "Are you the one who wakes my dad?" she asks. You nod. She stares for a second, then says, "Thanks." Just that. Then she runs off into the fog. You find yourself smiling the rest of the route, even as the chill seeps into your coat and the air stings your throat. The work is lonely, but not thankless. Sometimes the job changes. You get a request to wake someone at 4 a.m. for a train. A different man asks for 7:05 exactly, not a minute earlier, not a second later. You accommodate them all, you adapt, you become a walking timepiece, more accurate than any brass contraption ticking on a mantelpiece. And you never, ever oversleep. Because who wakes the knocker up? You do, with a second alarm, a candle left burning, a kettle that boils dry if you're late. Or maybe just the weight of the city itself, leaning on your shoulders, whispering, "Up, now." They're waiting. The world may be moving toward clocks, eventually. Factories installing horns, stations ringing bells. But for now, the city still needs you. Not because you're loud, but because you're precise. Because you remember every name, every time, every window that opens just so. You are the city's first whisper each morning, and in the hours before history gets written, you're the one who lifts the pen. The scent hits you before anything else. A wild, drifting mix of mint, wormwood, dried roses, and something sharper, like crushed pennyroyal on a stone step. It clings to your skirts, your hands, even your coin purse, and for you, it smells like livelihood. You're a herb woman, not a physician, not a witch, certainly not a chemist, though some may whisper that word with a wary glance. You're something older than all of those, part remedy peddler, part walking apothecary, part local oracle with a basket on your arm and a whole forest in your head. At sunrise you pack your wares, dried bundles tied in string, little cloth pouches of powder, vials of tincture stoppered tight with wax, everything labelled in your own hand, though most of your customers can't read them anyway. You begin your route through the back lanes and courtyards, calling out in a voice that's part chant, part invitation, lavender for dreams, thyme for the lungs, rosemary for sorrows. Children peek from behind curtains. Housewives wipe their hands on aprons and step into the street. Men pretending not to believe in your wares find excuses to buy just a sprig or two for the wife. You know who needs what. You don't always say it out loud. You hand the baker's wife a bundle of marjoram and tell her it helps with sleeplessness. You don't mention you heard her weeping through the open window last night. For the grocer's apprentice, it's comfrey root. For that cough, you say, even though he insists it's nothing. You saw the spots on his sleeves. You pass the church, but you don't go in. The curate gave you a look once that said he'd rather you didn't. That's fine. You don't need altars. You have nettles, which sting sharp enough to remind anyone they're still alive. Some days the market stalls eye you like competition. Others, they give you nods of solidarity. The flower seller once offered you half a crate of rejected blooms for your sachets. You gave her a jar of balm in return that soothed her winter-cracked knuckles. She never forgets your name now. Your remedies aren't guaranteed. You know that. Feverfew doesn't always ease migraines. Not every boiled root solves heartbreak, but you've seen enough to believe in patterns, chamomile and patience, licorice and breathing, sage and strength. And sometimes belief is part of the cure. There are places you're always welcome. The boarding house where the landlady lost 3 children, now filled with your lavender bundles. The seamstress's shop, where a pot of mint grows on the sill in an old teacup you gave her. The bricklayer's alley, where your balm gets passed hand to hand like treasure during cold season. And there are homes where you only knock once, quietly, and leave what's needed without a word. You're not rich, never will be. Your boots are worn through at the heel and your coat is mended so many times it's practically a quilt of itself. But your fingers know the feel of crushed valerian root better than any coin. Your nose can tell the difference between real chamomile and the cheap stuff in half a breath. And when someone calls you healer in the same tone they once used for grandmother, you smile. Because in a city full of smog and steel, you're still something green. By midday, your basket is lighter, but the city feels heavier. The fog has settled low, clinging to the cobbles, and the horses' hooves kick up puddles that smell more like industry than rain. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders and duck into the courtyard behind the ironmonger's shop, where Mrs. Drayton is waiting. She doesn't say hello. She just opens the door and gestures you inside. Her daughter's been ill again. Nerves, the doctor says. She stopped eating, sleeps in fragments. They gave her laudanum, but it makes her see shadows. You reach into your basket without a word and pull out 2 things. A muslin pouch filled with crushed hops, rose and lemon balm for the pillow, and a bottle of your own mixture. Chamomile, skullcap, valerian, and just the tiniest whisper of clove. It's not magic. You tell her that. It's comfort. It's warmth. It's something to hold on to that wasn't bottled by a stranger in a white coat. Mrs. Drayton presses coins into your hand and says, "Thank you," like it's the only word she's allowed to say aloud. Later, you pass by a row of gentlemen's houses where no one buys your wares. They have their own doctors, proper chemists with stiff collars and silver instruments. Still, you glance at their windows. You wonder what grows in their gardens. If they know the ivy creeping up their walls can be used to ease congestion or irritate the skin, depending on who you ask. Once, a housemaid snuck out to buy raspberry leaf for her sister. You never saw her again. You still think about her when you pass that door. You know which herbs heal. You also know which ones don't. Not all of your work is sweetness and balm. There are darker roots in your bag, foxglove for hearts that beat too wild, pennyroyal for the kinds of problems whispered behind shut doors. You never sell these to just anyone, but you do carry them, not for harm, for choice. You've seen enough to know that healing in Victorian Britain is rarely neat, never simple, and often denied to those who need it most. As the sun sets, you circle back to your flat. 1 room, 4th floor, south-facing window where you dry herbs on strings like prayer flags. The air inside smells like calendula and old books. You light a candle, pour hot water over fennel and mint, and soak your tired feet in a bucket of rosemary. Tomorrow it begins again. New aches, new faces, new hands reaching for help they don't know how to ask for. But for now, you sit, you sip, and you remind yourself, in a world where so much is soot and silence, your hands still know how to coax green things from the earth. You are not a miracle worker. You're not a charlatan. You're a herb woman, and in the right season, in the right home, in the right breath, that's enough. The first note of the tune rolls out like a sigh, low, lazy, and slightly off-key. You give the crank a half-turn more and the sound sharpens, brightens, becomes a waltz. The cobbled street responds the way it always does. A few heads turn, a child tugs at a sleeve, someone peeks out from a curtain on the 2nd floor. You're a street organ grinder. which means you make music out of metal teeth and spinning wheels, not fingers and strings. Your organ isn't grand. It's a hand-cranked box, about the size of a small dresser, mounted on a cart you push from block to block. Inside are dozens of pinned cylinders that pluck tiny tuned tines as the handle turns. It wheezes, it clanks, it sings, but most importantly, it draws attention. You take your spot at the corner of Rosewood Lane and Bow Street, just outside the pub where the windows fog up by noon and the laughter spills out before the ale. You don't need sheet music, just rhythm, familiarity, a bit of flair. You begin the morning with something chipper, Rule Britannia, or Daisy Bell, something the old women will hum and the children will skip to. And then, of course, there's your assistant. He's not really yours, technically speaking, but he comes every morning like clockwork, wearing his tiny red coat and matching cap. His name is Toby. He is a monkey, and he is the real reason people toss coins into your tin. Toby is trained well. He bows. He doffs his cap. He holds out a little brass cup and collects coins like a professional beggar with better manners. Children squeal with delight. Men grin despite themselves. Women, even those who mutter that music in the street is common, almost always give Toby a farthing. You trained him yourself back when you could barely afford feed. He used to try to eat the coins. Now he checks each one like a banker, then drops it into the box behind the wheel. There are risks, of course. Street organ grinders aren't loved by everyone. Some see you as noise, clutter, or worse, foreign. Many grinders are immigrants, and the accent on your tongue, Italian, Irish, Polish, changes how you're treated. Some shopkeepers shout. One once threw dishwater at Toby. You avoided that corner for weeks, but most days you're welcome like a moving melody. You know your audience. When the factory girls take their break, you switch to romantic songs, slow and lilting. When the market boys gather, you play something rowdy, drums clanking, rhythms fast. And when the sun dips low and the streets begin to glow orange, you always finish with something wistful. Toby sits on your shoulder by then, sleepy from the day. The music stays in the street long after you leave. Sometimes you'll pass a man whistling your last tune, or hear a little girl singing your melody as she hops along a curb. You smile, though they never notice. You're not a performer in a concert hall. You're not printed on playbills, but you're heard, and in a city where most people walk with their heads down, you make them look up. The streets begin to shift as evening creeps in. The butcher hauls in his signboard. The lamplighter passes by, nodding as he lifts his flame. You keep playing. One last song for the workers returning home, their boots scuffing the stone with a rhythm your organ almost matches. Toby curls up on the edge of the cart now, tired but alert, eyes half closed. He's had a good day. His cup is heavy with copper, and someone even dropped in a sugar cube wrapped in waxed paper. He sniffed it, licked it once, and decided it was worth keeping. As you finish your last tune, an old sailor's melody you've half forgotten the name of, you wipe your brow with a square of cloth and set the brake on the wheel. The air smells of smoke, onions, and something sweet from the bakery down the lane. You let yourself imagine a pie for dinner tonight, not just bread. A real pie. You earned it. Because being a street organ grinder isn't just about turning a crank. It's about knowing when to turn it, where to stand, how to read a crowd, when to start strong and when to let the music drift like smoke into the gaps between footsteps. Once, a constable asked if you had a license. You did. Barely legible, but stamped. He still looked at you like you'd stolen your cart. That night, you played God Save the Queen outside the station until he came out and begged you to stop. You smiled. Toby bowed, and you moved on. There's a hierarchy to street performers. Fiddlers who think they're better, singers who turn up their noses, but no one stays as long. or travels as far as the grinders. You've pushed your cart from Whitechapel to Chelsea, from the docks to the edge of Hyde Park. You've seen fog roll in so thick it swallowed sound. You've played through sleet, drizzle, shouting, laughter, and you've never once stopped for silence unless you chose to. You repair the organ yourself now. It's temperamental, the bellows a bit stiff, the cylinders scratched from overuse, but you know every creak, every stutter. It's as much a part of your voice as your breath. Sometimes you dream of a better one, a painted cart with gold trim, a newer set of tunes, maybe even a trained parrot or 2 monkeys with matching hats. But then again, there's something perfect about the one you've got. Honest, bruised, beloved, like you. You pack up just as the streetlights bloom amber. Toby stretches, yawns, and climbs up your shoulder like it's always been his. Tomorrow you'll play again. Maybe on a new corner, maybe back where the baker's daughter always smiles at the waltz, maybe near the theatre queue where people still hum your tune as they wait. And whether they know it or not, you'll be there, cranking out music like memory itself, because in a world that rushes, you remind it to pause, to listen, to feel, even if just for a single sweet turning moment. You arrive early before the bread is fully risen and the beer wagons rattle down the hill. Your apron's already powdered with chalk dust, and your fingers itch for the familiar glide of slate under skin. Today's canvas? A plain blackboard no bigger than a cupboard door. But to you, it's a stage. You are a chalkboard menu artist. Your job is part calligraphy, part persuasion, and part magician's charm. Because in the crowded streets of Victorian London, signs scream from every corner. Painted, carved, nailed to doors, hung on chains. And your job is to make someone stop in their tracks and say, "Oh, that looks good." The menu changes daily and your chalk must follow. Some days it's simple, beef stew, 4D. Other days it's elaborate. Smoked kipper atop toast with eggs soft-boiled to poetry. Your boss, a lean man with too many opinions and exactly one monocle, likes to dictate the wording while pacing back and forth, using phrases like rustic but tempting and not too literary. You nod, then ignore him, because you've developed a flair, a certain stroke to the letters, a way to make treacle tart curl like a secret. You loop the capital B in bangers and mash like the belly of a contented gentleman. You underline just so. You add flourishes, a tiny steaming pot, a wedge of pie, a fork dancing in the corner. It's not just art, it's theatre in powdered white. The regulars notice. The Coleman from 2 doors down always comments on your soup drawings. A passing barmaid once asked if she could commission you to chalk her name outside her mother's bakery in Hackney. "She won't let me," she whispered. "She says chalk's for boys, but your letters look like they sing. Your fingers are never truly clean. Chalk dust finds your cuffs, your collar, your nose. You carry a rag at all times and a pocket tin with your 3 best stubs. Thick, medium, and 1 needle thin for filigree. There's a war ongoing between you and the rain. You win most days by finishing fast and writing bold, but every so often the drizzle arrives just as you step back to admire your work. The letters run, the serifs weep. Once you found a dog's paw print across a carefully drawn roast lamb sketch. You nearly cried, but you rewrote. You always rewrite. Some cafes pay better than others. One lets you eat the daily pudding if you finish before noon. You've had more fig sponge and suet roll than most men twice your size. Another pays only in tea, but the owner lets you sign your work in the bottom corner. Just an R. But it means something. You've even started sketching little scenes into the corners. A cat eyeing the fish plate, a hand reaching for a tankard, a pie with steam spelling hot in cursive. Customers notice. They lean closer. They smile. You're not just drawing food, you're drawing hunger. And in a city of distractions, that's its own kind of power. By afternoon, the chalkboard becomes more than just a sign. It's a local conversation piece. People begin referring to dishes by how you drew them. "I'll have the one with the gravy waterfall," someone says, pointing at your rendering of the shepherd's pie. "The pudding that looks like a castle," says a boy in short trousers, grinning at your sponge cake sketch with battlements and a cherry on top. You once turned a bowl of porridge into a masterpiece, a sun rising from a creamy sea, rays curling in stylized steam. The oatmeal was still bland, but they sold out before noon. Sometimes the pub owner gets ambitious. "Write something in French," he urges one morning, slapping down a recipe scribbled on the back of a ledger. You pause. You've only got room for 22 letters. You settle on "Bouffe à la whatever's hot." The patrons howl. They order in droves. Your style begins to spread. A rival pub across the square hires their nephew to mimic your style. You smile when you pass his board. Crooked lettering, flourishes that look more like scribbles. It's flattering in its way. You start adding subtle signatures in your own. A looped "the" here, a feathered full stop there. But it's not just pubs anymore. You get requests now from pie shops, tea rooms, even a bookstall that wants you to draw a chalkboard of the week's most edible novels. You write Oliver Twist, pairs well with wheat gruel, and draw a bowl with a spoon that looks very unimpressed. You've begun to carry spare boards, little ones, just in case someone needs a quick sign for a half-day sale or an apology for being out of treacle. You once wrote "sorry." The pudding eloped. It made 2 passers-by snort so hard they walked in and bought scones they didn't want. But there's a secret to your success that no one knows. You eavesdrop. You arrive early, blend into the morning rush, and listen to the gossip, the grumbles, the cravings. You find out what people are hungry for long before they see a menu. Not just food, comfort, laughter, a reason to smile through the coal dust and deadlines. And then you give it to them. One letter at a time. Sometimes, as you pack your chalk into its tin and wipe your smudged fingertips on your apron, you wonder if this job will last. What happens when someone invents signs that don't wash away? Ink, maybe. Or painted boards that don't change. That stay the same every day. How boring that would be. Because your signs aren't just information. They're moments. Little gifts that vanish by dusk and are born fresh each dawn. You are part artist, part messenger, part fleeting poet of the day's hunger. And as you walk home, passing couples still laughing about your doodled goose, you realise something. No one remembers the printed menus, but they'll remember the one with the gravy waterfall, and the pudding that looked like a castle, and the pie that winked at them on their way to work. You've barely finished setting up the striped curtain when the first pair of muddy boots appear in front of you. A boy, maybe 6, clutches a sticky sweet in one hand and a crust of bread in the other. He doesn't blink. He knows exactly where to stand. Right in front. First row. You give the curtain one last tug and clear your throat. Showtime. You're a Punch and Judy puppeteer, street performer, voice contortionist, master of slapstick chaos. Your stage is a painted box barely wider than a barrel, hoisted onto a platform with squeaky hinges and hidden compartments. It looks like a colourful toy house from the front. From the back, it's your sweaty little empire of strings, squeakers, and unpredictable laughs. That's the way to do it. Your hand shoots up with Mr. Punch grinning horribly in his red suit and pointy hat. The crowd cheers. The baby starts crying. Someone throws a half-penny. It begins. Punch and Judy is no gentle nursery tale. It's mayhem. It's tradition. It's the kind of thing that Victorian parents pretend to frown at while chuckling behind gloved fingers. You slip behind the curtain and crouch into position. One hand operates the puppet. The other scrambles for props. Your voice jumps octaves, switching between high-pitched cackles and deep growls. Judy appears, flapping her arms. Punch bashes the sausage. Judy scolds him. Punch cackles. The baby is dropped. The crocodile enters. The crowd goes wild. Children scream with laughter. Adults shake their heads and pretend not to smile. The baker's apprentice howls. Someone in the back repeats every line a second too late, like an echo with hiccups. You've done this routine 100 times, but it's never the same. The crowd shapes the story. If they cheer for the policeman, he wins. If they boo, he gets walloped with the stick. Once, a drunk barrister demanded Punch be put on trial, and you improvised a courtroom scene that lasted 15 minutes and ended with the judge getting flattened by a string of sausages. You don't just perform the story, you wrestle it. The voices take a toll. You use a swazzle, a tiny metal and reed contraption tucked in the roof of your mouth, to make Punch's iconic squeal. It tickles your throat, strains your jaw, and has made you sneeze violently mid-line more than once. But oh, that sound, that cackle, it's older than gaslight, older than the penny press. It's the voice of mischief itself, echoing down alleys and into the hearts of children who just want to see someone get hit with a stick and laugh about it. Mr. Punch is no hero. He's a menace. But in a world full of rules, clocks and lectures about posture, there's something deeply satisfying about a puppet who throws sausages at authority. You learned the trade from a man named Felix who used to perform by the docks. He said, "Timing, my boy. It's all about timing and sausage control." You weren't sure if he was serious, but you've repeated those words before every show since. The rhythm of the crowd becomes your metronome. You listen for the giggles, the gasps, the delayed claps from the toddlers in the back. Your puppets swing to that music. Punch's crooked nose bobs in time with laughter. Judy's slap lands not a second too early. The crocodile always gets an encore if the kids chant loud enough. Behind the curtain, you're sweating through your collar. Your shoulders ache. The swazzle has rubbed your gums raw. But your hands move with a kind of muscle memory, like a fiddler who no longer thinks about the bow. It's chaos with choreography. And while it may look like nonsense to a passerby, you know exactly what you're doing. You're pacing the drama. You're guiding emotion. You're telling a story with sausages, a squeaky voice, and a puppet that looks like a deranged parsnip in a jester's outfit. The best part? For 10 whole minutes, everyone forgets themselves. A housemaid forgets the pile of sheets waiting to be scrubbed. A chimney sweep stops coughing long enough to laugh. A little girl in hand-me-down boots with holes in the toes squeals like royalty. And even the stern-faced men from the counting house smile, just a little, before hurrying away pretending they never stopped. And you, invisible behind the curtain, hear all of it. Sometimes you sneak in your own flourishes, Mr. Punch making fun of the Prime Minister, or Judy declaring she's running off to become a scientist. The grown-ups catch those. They chuckle under their breath. They toss a penny into your tin, not for the show, but for the wink behind it. On good days, you earn enough for dinner, a pint, and a heel of cheese to share with the alley cat who guards your puppet box at night. On great days, someone hires you for a birthday party or a garden fete. You bring the whole cast: Punch, Judy, Baby, Crocodile, Policeman, Hangman, even the ghost. Yes, there's a ghost now. You added him for Halloween and never had the heart to take him out. Your puppets are patched, frayed, and missing buttons. But each one has a voice you crafted, a movement that's uniquely theirs. They live in a trunk that smells of cedar, chalk, and sweat. When you open it, it's like unsealing a storybook that's been shouted instead of read. You've lost count of how many shows you've done, but you remember the important ones. The day the boy with the bandaged eye sat front and centre and laughed louder than anyone. The day the old woman on crutches said, "Haven't heard that voice since my brothers were alive." The day someone called you an artist. You aren't sure you believe them, but then again, not everyone can turn a wooden box, a bit of cloth and a squeak into something that makes strangers laugh together in the rain. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. Because in a city of smoke and sorrow, Mr. Punch still gets the last laugh. You roll the cart carefully over the uneven pavement, wheels squeaking in protest as it bumps over each crack. The wooden sides rattle faintly, and inside, beneath the tarp and twine, your treasure waits, a bulky, boxy contraption of mahogany, brass and glass. Your mobile companion, your trade, your livelihood. You're a street photographer with a portable darkroom. Not the glamorous kind with a studio and velvet curtains. Not the portraitist who captures ladies in lace beside pot plants. You're the kind who chases the light, sets up on corners, in parks, outside factories during the lunch whistle, offering instant mementos for a few spare coins. You find your spot near the railway station, where lovers part, soldiers depart, and every third person seems to need a face to remember. You unfold your wooden tripod, polish the lens with the corner of your shirt, and wait. It doesn't take long. "Can you do couples?" The girl asking barely meets your eyes, her gloved hand entwined tightly with the man beside her. They stand straight and nervous, the kind of posture reserved for both photographs and funerals. You nod. You gesture to the painted backdrop mounted behind your setup. An old curtain depicting a stately garden, slightly faded from sun and time. They smile at it like it might lend them status or serenity. You guide them to pose, hands folded, faces forward, eyes slightly upward. You've learned the secret to a good likeness isn't in the equipment. It's in how you freeze the moment, just long enough for the story to settle. You lift the dark cloth and duck beneath it, adjusting the bellows, checking the light. The sun peeks just enough through the clouds. You slide the plate, hold your breath, click. Stillness becomes memory. The magic isn't instant. Not yet. You invite them to wait as you retreat into the back of your cart, your portable sanctum. It's barely big enough to crouch in, and it smells of chemicals, damp wood, and time itself. In the red glow of your safe light, you measure carefully. Developer, fixer, rinse. The tray ripples. A face appears. 2, actually. Soft and slightly surprised, like they didn't expect it to work. You've done it again. You've captured something real. You return with the finished photo, still damp and smelling of vinegar. They gasp softly, smile, and press a few coins into your palm. She tucks the image into her handbag like it's something sacred. By now, a small line has formed. A young boy, muddy knees and all, clutching a battered coin. An older woman with a pressed bonnet and hopeful eyes. A pair of sailors, loud and swearing, who promise they'll hold still if you make us look like we're not idiots. You smile. You know better than to promise that. Each face is a story, and each photo becomes a keepsake someone didn't know they needed, until they saw it emerge from your tray like a memory surfacing. You're not just a photographer, you're a catcher of ghosts, and this box of gears and glass, it's your net. As the day wears on, your fingers stain deeper, brown from the developer, red from the fixing salts, the creases of your nails permanently dyed with the quiet evidence of your trade. You've tried gloves, but they dull your movements. It's better to feel the slide of the plate, the brush of paper edges, the thin slick of wet glass as the image emerges like a breath held too long. You've learned the little tricks. A drop of glycerin to bring warmth to pale faces. A quick flick of chalk to highlight a collar in shadow. A breath across the lens just before the shutter snaps. For that soft, ghost-like haze the ladies love. Not all of your customers want beauty. Some want truth, or at least their version of it. The factory foreman insists on holding his pocket watch chain so it shows in the photo. Got to look respectable, he grunts. The washerwoman asks you to blur the scar on her cheek. It's not who I am anymore. And a sailor once begged you to make him look taller. You placed a wooden box beneath his feet and said nothing. You're not just capturing appearances, you're preserving intention. Some come to you in secret. A young woman, shivering in her shawl, asks for a portrait, but no name, no initials, no copy. You nod, you take her likeness, and you never ask why. The look in her eyes said enough. Children, though, are the greatest challenge. Always squirming, blinking, moving at the last second. You've devised games. Ask them to hold a marble still in their palm, or to pretend the camera is a dragon, and they must stare it down. The results are often imperfect, but full of life, and occasionally there are the ones who simply stand before you and smile. No posing, no requests, just themselves. Those photos stay in your mind longest. You keep a private box beneath your cart. Inside, wrapped in cloth, are plates you never gave away. Lost clients, unclaimed moments. A portrait of a soldier who never returned. A woman who posed with a letter in her hand, its seal unbroken. A boy with a dog that looked directly into the lens as if it understood everything. You call them your ghosts. On rainy days when no one comes, you sit inside the dark room, flip through the box, and remember. Not their names, those are long gone, but the weight of their faces. The way they looked at you, not as a tradesman, but as someone who might hold time still just for them. You've never owned a photograph of yourself. It feels wrong somehow. As if to be seen too clearly would break the spell. Because here, behind the lens, you're both invisible and all-seeing. You're the eye that notices, the hand that frames, the quiet architect of memory. And when your last plate is fixed and the final image dries beneath the cart, you pack away your tripod, tighten the tarp and head down the lane. Past the bakers, the lamplighters, the shouting newsboys, with your ghost behind you, and the city ahead, waiting to be remembered. The room smells like tea roses, starch, and something faintly citrusy. Lemon oil, perhaps, rubbed into ivory. You sit at a lacquered table under a high window where the light falls just so, slanted across silken paper. Your fingers are already smudged, your wrists steady. Before you lies a folded fan of white satin stretched across fine ribs of bone. It's blank, waiting. You're a fan painter, and this fan is your canvas. Not a canvas in the traditional sense. There's no forgiveness here. One slip of the brush and the entire piece is ruined. The satin bleeds if you press too hard, resists if you go too light. Every line must be perfect the first time. The fan's owner is a woman of means, of course. No one else commissioned such things. She arrived with a swatch of her ball gown and a vague demand. Something romantic, but not too sentimental. You knew exactly what she meant. You sketched lightly in charcoal, bare outlines, a moonlit garden, a pair of lovers, neither too forward nor too shy. You've done this scene before, but each version is new, a different tilt of the chin, a wilder rose, a dove in the distance or not. The paint is mixed with care, pigment and gum arabic, a whisper of egg white for gloss. Your brush is sable, narrow as a pin. You paint in strokes smaller than a sigh. There's music in the background, a quartet, faint from the salon below. It makes the hand move smoother. It drowns out the memory of your first mistake. Years ago, a cherry blossom gone too wide, too pink. The client refused to pay. You burn the fan in a gutter. You don't make mistakes anymore. Sometimes, while you paint, you imagine where this fan will go. Into a gloved hand at a garden party, raised flirtatiously during a dance, dropped on purpose at the feet of some man who smells of cigars and expectation. Will he pick it up? Will she let him? You've painted fans that ended engagements, others that began affairs. One was sent back in pieces after a duel. Another ended up in the Queen's collection. though no one credited your name. Fan painters don't sign their work, not officially. But you have your marks. A tiny dragonfly near the edge of the second rib, a curl in the ribbon that shouldn't be there, your private signature, your little rebellion. As the day passes, you pause only to stretch your fingers. The shadows lengthen, the satin softens beneath your brush. The lovers take form, the roses bloom. You don't paint what's real, you paint what should be. You paint longing, distance, the moment before a kiss. And though you'll never hold this fan again, your hands will be remembered in every flick of the wrist that opens it, every flutter that turns heads. By twilight, the painting is nearly finished. You add the final details in silence, a faint silver wash to the clouds, the gleam of moonlight on a fountain, a shadow that hints at mystery but reveals nothing. The fan is delicate, but the story it tells is deliberate, just enough suggestion to stir imagination, not so much that it invites gossip. That balance is your true skill. You've painted fans for widows, debutantes, courtesans, duchesses, all different faces, same needs. They want beauty, yes, but also power. A fan, in the right hand, is a language, a shield, a weapon. You've heard the codes whisper between servants. A fan touch to the cheek means yes, to the chin means no. Open wide, it's interest. Half closed, it's danger. Dropped, that means follow me. You never learned these codes from a book. You learned by watching. At the back of ballrooms, you stood behind a cousin who married well, holding her shawl, her glass, her silence. And you saw what fans did when words couldn't be spoken. That's why you began to paint them, not as decorations, but as tools. The fan you finished today is one of your best. The folds catch the light just right. Each rib a slice of a moonlit garden, each opening a fresh breath of illusion. You hold it to the window and watch how it flutters. It dances, and it waits. You pack it carefully in a padded case. Deliver it yourself, because fans, like secrets, should never be trusted to messengers. The client greets you in a dressing robe and pearls, barely glancing at the case. But when she lifts the fan, opens it once, twice, and smiles at her reflection in the mirror, then you know she's seen it. The softness of her approval is the only compliment you'll ever get. But it's enough. You walk home with empty hands but stained fingertips. The scent of gum Arabic clings to your sleeves. You pass gas lamps, hear piano music spilling from windows, and somewhere, far off, a burst of laughter from a party you'll never attend. And yet, your work is already there. A fan painted by your hand will glide through that crowd. It will flutter near a waistcoat. It will close with a snap sharp enough to silence a rumour. It will fall intentionally at the exact moment two eyes meet. No one will say your name, but in that half-second pause between glance and gesture, your story will unfold. Because though the paper may fade and the paint may chip, the dance you choreographed will live again every time the fan is opened. And that, in this city of facades and powdered truths, is a kind of immortality. You strap the boards to your shoulders like a walking sandwich of wood and slogans, one in front, one in back. Painted letters declare, try Mrs. Bletchley's tonic for nerves, flatulence, and moral disorder. The words bob slightly as you walk, turning you into a mobile paragraph, a human lamppost with feet. You're a human billboard walker, and your job is simple. Be seen, not heard, not consulted, just noticed. You start your morning outside Charing Cross, blending into the rush of boots and bustle. You walk slowly, never too fast, making sure every word of your sign has time to imprint itself into someone's subconscious before they disappear into a train carriage or a coffee shop queue. It's not glamorous, but it pays a coin or two. And the rules are clear. Wear the signs, stay upright, Keep moving. Avoid puddles, dogs and children who think it's funny to knock on your backboard. You do your job in silence, but your head is far from empty. As you drift past butchers and tobacconists, you compose little phrases in your mind. This way walks despair, with boots worn thin but letters bold. A man of messages but never his own. No one asks for your opinion, just the opinion of the boards you carry. This week it's Mrs. Bletchley's tonic. Last week it was a bakery. The week before, a solicitor offering quiet divorce settlements. No blood, no blame. That one got a few winks and a slap on the back. You don't flinch anymore when people read your board aloud like it's a novelty. You're used to the snickers, the mocking voices, the ones who say, he's probably never even had nerves or flatulence. You have, you just don't advertise it. There are regulars who pass you on your route. One woman always offers a quiet, morning dear, as if you're her slightly eccentric nephew. A boy sells roasted chestnuts near the park and gives you the ones that crack open too soon. Your favourite. A man with an umbrella who reads every single board you wear and never laughs. He just nods, solemnly, like he understands. Sometimes, when the client wants to be clever, you're handed props. A tray of fake medicine bottles to carry in one hand. A pair of sandwich rolls hanging from the side. Once a feathered hat with a sign that said, "Don't look at my hat, look at my back." You wore it. You hated it. You got paid. The work is seasonal. In the rain, the boards warp. In the wind, they act like sails. In the heat, they cling to your back like extra skin. You've had straps break, slogans peel, even a dog relieve itself on your shin mid-pitch. But still you show up. You walk, you advertise. Because as strange as it is, there's something oddly dignified in being dependable, even if it's just as a billboard with shoes, and you've learned something no sign can teach. People see you, even if they pretend not to. You hit your stride by midday. That's when the streets are fullest. Hawkers shouting, horses, clattering, shop doors swinging open and shut with a rhythm that feels almost like breath. And you, wedged somewhere in between, swaying slightly under the weight of your message. Mrs. Bletchley's tonic, for a more civilized stomach. Someone snickers. You keep walking. The sign creaks as you move. You've learned to listen to it, not just for splinters or shifts, but for rhythm. Every billboard has a sound, a sway, a tempo. You walk to it. If you don't, the weight shifts wrong. The backboard bounces against your spine, the front tilts into your knees. You become part of the structure. You used to be embarrassed by it, this walking role as human punctuation. But after a while, something changes. You stop thinking of yourself as the message. You start thinking of yourself as the frame. After all, the cobbler's sign doesn't envy the shoes, it just holds them up. Some days you change boards halfway through. Your employer hands you a new set. Mother Pence's ink, black as your regrets. You chuckle. It's a better laugh than yesterday's tooth tonic bites back. You strap it on and march toward the Strand, where more eyes roam. Then, a child asks the question you get at least once a week. Do you ever read your own signs? You smile and nod. Of course. I carry them, don't I? She thinks about that, frowns as though it's too obvious to be interesting, then skips away. But it sticks in your head. Do you believe the signs? Have you ever bought a tonic, visited the pie shop, sent a discreet divorce letter to the man in the red vest on Cork Street? No, and yet you've sold them all with your silence. You begin to notice patterns. Which slogans earn coins tossed into your coat pocket? Which ones cause people to cross the street without looking at you? The worst boards are the ones too clever by half. No one reads a joke in a hurry. The best, short, bold, unapologetic. Bread that doesn't argue back. That one made a butcher laugh so hard he tipped you a whole shilling. By sunset, the paint begins to flake around the edges. The straps dig into your shoulders. You feel like a walking tombstone by the time you return the boards to the storage shed behind the printing shop. You roll your shoulders, stretch your back. You're just a man again, no longer a sentence. And yet, as you walk home, something lingers. You glance at the windows you passed earlier, now glowing with gaslight, at the people eating food you advertised, reading papers you once wore, and you realise, today, in some small way, you shaped the street. Not as a speaker, not as a writer, but as the quiet walking pause between the city's sentences, and tomorrow you'll be another one. The workshop smells like lavender, dust, and frayed ambition. You sit by the window in a low chair with a loop of cord wrapped around your fingers and a bundle of threads pulled in your lap. The light is weak today, but your eyes are used to straining. You don't need much to do your work. You're a tassel maker, and your world is one of spirals, knots and threads that must never tangle. The bell above the shop door hasn't rung in hours, but that's normal. Your trade doesn't scream for attention. It's quiet, ornamental, secretly essential. No one needs tassels, until they do. They're everywhere, once you know where to look. Dangling from curtain ties in drawing rooms, swinging from keys in hotel doors, stitched to the corners of cushions, cloaks, lampshades, bookmarks, attached to military dress and opera programs, even hidden in the folds of parasols where the little loop of braid helps a lady grip her daintiness with confidence. You make them all by hand. It begins with the head, the firm core wrapped tight in thread until it's smooth and proud. Then the skirt where the strands are combed out like a miniature mane. You cut, measure, bind. You add loops, collars, and once in a while, if the client pays enough, beads. It's rhythmic, calming in a way. Twist, pull, cinch. You count in fours. You hum. You think. Some tassels are meant to match a larger piece. An ottoman, a cloak. Your scent swatches of velvet and thread and told, make it sing, but not shout. You know what that means. Once, a man came in requesting a tassel for the tip of his walking stick. For flair, he said, twirling his moustache. You gave him green and gold, knotted in a helix that reminded you of champagne bubbles. He tipped his hat and walked out like he'd just been knighted. Your clients are rarely the ones who use the tassels. Usually it's decorators, housekeepers, shopkeepers with fussy tastes, a few milliners, one very shy harpist who insists on custom tassels for her tuning key. You work quietly while the world bustles outside. Sometimes you listen to the clip of hooves on the cobbles and imagine where your tassels go, hanging from sedan chairs, dangling in parlours where important things are whispered beneath chandeliers, tucked into drawers with perfume bottles and unsent letters. Once, a tassel of yours was seen on the back of a duchess's chair during a newspaper illustration of a garden party. You clipped it out and kept it in a drawer for weeks before it got stained with ink and tossed. The shop's front window holds a small display, a single red tassel with a brass cap posed as if mid-swing. People pass it by. Some peer in, most don't. But those who enter, they know exactly what they want. They've come for something specific, a detail, a finishing touch, something that sways when the door opens, something that whispers, this too was considered. You keep your cords in old tea tins sorted by thickness and sheen. Your golds live beside your crimsons. Your navies and olives share a box. The whites, ivory, pearl, bone and wedding cream are kept separate, because they tangle if looked at wrong. You've learned their moods. Silk knots differently than cotton. Rayon frays if you breathe on it too hard. Linen can be temperamental in the fog. You coax each thread into obedience, like training a flock of mice to march in circles. There's no waste in your shop. Even the short ends, clipped from the skirts of tassels like snipped hair. get bundled together for repair jobs, school kits, or the occasional impromptu mouse toy for the alley cat who thinks your windowsill is hers. Some days, the requests are ordinary. 10 matching tiebacks for a boarding house, curtain trims for a music teacher's parlour. But then come the strange commissions, the ones that make the hours hum. A theatre troupe needs 20 tassels that match a phantom's cape. Make them swing with menace, they said. You did. A gentleman commissions a single tassel with an ivory head and mourning fringe. No explanation. You didn't ask. But when he returned weeks later to buy a second, this time in dove grey, you knew something had shifted. Then there was the bride who wanted tassels for her gloves, so they'll flutter as I wave goodbye. She paid in coin and a slice of almond cake wrapped in lace. You ate it slowly, alone. You never expected tassels to become your livelihood. It began as a side task back when you stitched hems for a milliner. But your tassels sold faster than her hats. So you set up your own table, made your own loops, started your own quiet empire. And now your fingers move on instinct. You can bind a head while carrying a conversation, tie a cord in your sleep. You've made thousands, some elegant, some ridiculous, one shaped like a pineapple for a man who insisted on tropical flair. You didn't ask, your name is never on the object, but you know your work. You spot it hanging behind shop counters, draped across theatre curtains, dangling from a velvet rope in front of an exhibit where people lean in and never notice the fringe. But you do. You walk by, heart quietly swelling, and think, that one's mine. It's strange, perhaps, to make something that exists purely to dangle, to decorate, to sway. But in this stiff, soot-covered city, where lines are sharp and words are often sharpest, your work adds the softness, the movement, the hint of celebration, or memory, or pride. And for as long as there are curtains to draw, doors to open, or memories to tug from the edge of a costume, someone will need a tassel, and that someone will come to you. You're out before the bells chime noon, apron tied, crate in hand, voice warmed up and ready. You're a music sheet seller, a wandering peddler of melodies, harmonies and dreams printed in ink. Your goods? Neatly folded pages of notes and lyrics, clipped at the corner and organised by tempo, waltzes, ballads, hymns, comic songs, some for the parlour, some for the pub, some just for the heart. The city hums around you, coal carts clatter, hawkers shout, chimney sweeps whistle, but your song is softer. New songs from Covent Garden, piano scores and voice parts you call. Your voice a sing-song rhythm practiced to rise just above the noise, but never so loud as to seem desperate. No one trusts a desperate tune. You stand near music shops that won't hire you, but don't mind the free crowd you bring. Outside tea houses, near schools where girls in bonnets carry sheet music tied in ribbon, hopeful for the chance to play something their governess didn't choose. Your customers vary. A middle-aged man with oil-stained cuffs buys a comic duet to sing with his daughters. A nervous young woman asks for something lively but not vulgar for an afternoon recital. You hand her the mill-wheel gallop, upbeat, proper, with just enough swing to lift the corners of a tight-lipped aunt's mouth. Every song has its place. You carry favourites, The Lost Chimes, Gentleman Joe, Sailor's Return, but you also stock new pieces from composers you've never met, printed on rougher paper still warm from the press. They arrive folded and unfinished, and it's your job to sell them as if they're the next national anthem. You've learned to read people. Some want sorrow, something slow in a minor key to match the week they've had. Others want a joke, a jig, a touch of music hall irreverence. You pull each page like a card from a deck, matching mood to melody. The margins are thin and the profits thinner. A half-penny here, a farthing there. You sell more when it rains. Strange, but true. Something about damp weather makes people long for lamplight and a melody. You keep your sheets wrapped in oilcloth, tucked under your arm or in a battered satchel when the wind rises. A single drop of water can smear an entire page. You've lost songs to the fog before, and yet, when the sun cuts through and you watch someone tap their foot to a song they haven't heard in years, it feels like alchemy. You aren't a composer, you aren't a singer, but you bring songs to life. And in this grey, grindstone city, that's no small thing. By mid-afternoon, the streets have settled into their usual rhythm. Boots clicking, babies crying, the faint hiss of lamplighters preparing their climb. You've moved toward the quieter lanes now, where the homes are smaller, but the windows stay open and pianos echo softly through thin walls. You pause near one, just for a moment, and recognise the tune drifting out. The Soldier's Lament, a piece you sold 3 weeks ago to a girl with ink on her fingers and a smudge on her nose. She'd hesitated at the cost but bought it anyway, clutching it like it meant something more than just notes on paper. You smile. That's why you do this. Each sheet you sell is more than music. It's possibility. A chance for someone to express something they can't put into words. Joy, heartbreak, longing. For just a few pence, you place it in their hands. You've seen what it does. The quiet boy who never spoke until he played. The widow who asked for nothing but something slow for one voice. The housemaid who hid her sheet music under the mattress, practicing after everyone had gone to sleep. You've sold to churches and choirs, to pub pianists and Sunday school teachers. Once, even to a street magician who used a printed waltz as part of his act. He said it made the doves fly on cue. You didn't ask how. Not every sale is sweet. A man once bought a love ballad, only to tear it in two when he spotted his ex-fiancée across the street. You offered him a drinking song instead. He laughed, took it, and tipped you twice. Some clients want the lyrics only, scratched onto newsprint or copied into little handbooks. Others can't read music but ask you to sing a line so they can feel the mood. You oblige when your voice isn't hoarse. It's not perfect, but it's honest. And on days when the light fades early and your legs grow tired, you still carry your bundle like treasure. Because you never know when someone will ask for just the right song, the one they didn't even know they needed. You pass a bakery, and the shop girl inside waves. You gave her a poker last winter, and she played it at her cousin's wedding. She told you later it made the whole family dance, even her uncle who'd sworn off joy after the potatoes failed. You waved back, quietly warmed. At the end of the day, you count your coins, thumbed and tarnished. You smooth out your remaining sheets, refold the dog-eared corners, and tuck the most hopeful piece on top, Spring Again, or The Road Home, depending on how the air feels. And as you walk back through the darkening streets, your satchel a little lighter, and your heart oddly full, you hum one of the melodies aloud. Soft, steady, just loud enough to echo off the bricks. Because you are the city's quiet song seller. And in the spaces between the clatter and the coal dust, you give London its tune. You rattle your little cart down the alley behind a bakery where the jars are always warm from being near the ovens. You're a glass jar collector, and though your work may sound mundane, it's one of the most quietly important trades in your entire neighbourhood. Your eyes are always scanning. Windowsills, shop corners, backyards, pub counters. You're looking for the gleam of empty jars, small ones with tight mouths that once held preserves, squat ones that once kept mustard or chutney, taller vessels from apothecaries or barbershops. You knock politely on the side doors of businesses offering a soft, practised line. Any glass for collection today? Whole or cracked, I take both. Most days the answer is yes. In Victorian Britain, glass is precious. It's reusable, washable, saleable. But few households want the bother of reusing it themselves, and even fewer want to store cracked jars that might shatter beneath their fingers. That's where you come in. You collect, sort, clean, and redistribute. Like a secret courier in the economy of everyday things. This morning you've already picked up 3 vinegar jars, 1 sugarloaf pot, and a curious round-bottomed flask from a tailor who said it used to hold something best not sniffed. You didn't. Back home, your shed is a kingdom of glass. You've built shelves along the walls and lined them with jars grouped by size and clarity. Some are pristine, perfect for resale to confectioners and grocers. Others are chipped or fogged. But you know an apothecary who actually prefers that. He says it gives his tinctures an aged authority. You're not above patchwork either. You've learned to sand down a sharp rim, soak off stubborn labels, and reseal a cracked lid with wax or gutta percha. Once, you even mended a broken jar using egg white and lime, an old trick passed down from an aunt who'd once boiled ink in her fireplace. But you don't just sell them back to shops. You also trade with glass blowers, who melt the rejects down and pay you by weight, and now and then a housemaid or baker's wife will offer you half a loaf or a pot of lard for 3 matching jars. Fair deal, you'd say. One of your proudest moments? Spotting a row of your salvaged jars on the windowsill of a proper chemist shop on Fleet Street, each filled with dried lavender and labelled in perfect copperplate. You didn't say a word, just stood outside for a long minute, admiring your invisible contribution to London's tidy chaos. It's not glamour you're after, it's utility. You're the quiet recycler of a city that throws away more than it realises. And at the end of the day, when your hands smell faintly of vinegar and beeswax and you've traded 20 jars for 2 shillings, a smile and a meat pie, you feel oddly proud. Because in a world spinning on steam and soot, you found a way to make the smallest things useful again. You pass by a row of brick townhouses where the kitchen, windows always steam in winter, and you know exactly which families will save their jars for you without being asked. Some even give them a rinse, though others hand them over still streaked with treacle or crusted with mustard seed. You take them all. You're not picky. Down at the docks, you've struck a silent arrangement with a fishmonger who sets aside his vinegar bottles and small jars that once held pickled onions. You trade him for bundles of kindling, wood scraps you gather from the cooper's yard and split by hand. You're a collector, but you're also a connector. Your network sprawls quietly through the city. The baker who needs jars for gooseberry jam knows to call you. The widow who makes hair pomade in her cellar asks for your smoothest jars with matching lids. And there's an old man 2 streets down who won't buy from anyone but you, because you never give me one with a cracked bottom. You've got a reputation now, and it's funny how people start to treat you like a fixture. Kids wave when you pass. One even drew your cart in chalk once, lopsided, but it warmed you all day. A grocer once offered you a glass of ale just because you always look like you're thinking. But what you're usually thinking about is glass, the way it warps light, the trick to stacking it so nothing chips, whether a pale green jar with a long neck would suit a flower shop better than a bakery. You think about the lives these jars have had, the spices they've held, the dinners they've helped prepare, the tiny fingers that once snuck jam out of them at midnight. And you think about how odd it is that something so fragile ends up lasting longer than most things in this city. Sometimes you find beauty in the broken ones, a crack that curves like ivy, a bubble frozen in the side like a tear. You've kept a few tucked away in a drawer. One holds buttons, one keeps your chalk dry. One, your favourite, is filled with smooth stones from the Thames, each one rubbed dull by centuries of current. At night, when the gas lamps flicker and you're home again, you line up the day's finds on your workbench. You rub each rim clean with an old cloth. You set aside the sharp ones for melting. The best ones you polish twice. And as you wipe your hands and stare at your collection, plain, clear, imperfect, you realise something. You don't just collect jars, you collect stories. Not the kind people tell aloud, but the kind they leave behind, on glass, in grime, in grooves you can feel with your thumb, and in the quiet rattle of your cart echoing down a cobbled street just after sundown maybe, just maybe, London listens back. You sit beneath a canvas parasol, knees close together, scissors gleaming in the filtered sunlight. You're a silhouette cutter, and your hands are the only tools you need. Not paint, not charcoal, just black paper, a pair of sharp scissors, and an eye for the invisible lines that shape a person's essence. Your stand is set up at the edge of the promenade near the Crystal Palace, or sometimes outside the theatre, where couples stroll past in their Sunday best, cheeks flushed from wine or wind. They pause, curious, then they sit. "Just your side profile, madam," you say softly, tilting the wooden chair toward the best light. The trick is not to make them self-conscious. Confidence is the key. Yours, not theirs. They sit. You glance once, twice. Then the blades begin. Snip, curve, slice. No hesitation, no sketches. You cut straight from eye to hand. A single mistake, and the paper must be discarded. But you rarely make mistakes anymore. You know how to suggest a jawline with a dip, a curl of hair with a flick, the fold of a bonnet, the puff of a cravat. Every snip carries more than shape. It carries identity. Within a minute or two, the profile is finished. The result? A delicate black cutout striking against the cream paper you mount it on. A side-facing portrait that somehow captures more of a person than a full oil painting ever could. They always gasp. "Oh, that's me." You offer them a second copy for a discount. People often want one for a sweetheart or for their mother. You've seen women clutch the silhouette like a locket. You've seen men try to look casual while tucking it into a vest pocket. You don't speak much as you work. Words can jostle the rhythm, but you listen. You hear the compliments, the worries, the little stories they offer as you cut. One woman told you about a fiancé lost at sea. She asked if you could cut his silhouette from memory. You tried. She wept. You've cut children, soldiers, florists, clowns. Once, a dog. They say silhouettes are cheap portraits, but you know better. They're instant heirlooms. In the evenings, your fingertips are stained black from handling so much paper. You sit by the window of your tiny rented room, candlelight flickering, and go through the day's stack. Some you cut on request, others you made from memory after someone walked by. You call these your ghost cuts. Faces that intrigued you, shapes that lingered in your eye long after they'd passed. You pin the best ones to the wall for a time, watching your little gallery grow. A chimney sweep with a crooked hat, a widow with a nose sharp as a quill, a laughing girl with hair like seaweed. They feel like company, though they never speak. Sometimes someone comes back days later, clutching their silhouette like it's proof they existed. One man told you he used it to propose. A child framed hers for a school prize, and an old gentleman in a stiff collar once returned, holding his cutout like parchment, gold. "She's passed," he whispered, "but I've still got this of her. Thank you." You nodded. There was nothing else to say. You've never had a shop. Your studio is wherever light falls right, beside fountains, under park arches, in borrowed alcoves at festivals. When it rains, you tuck your blades away and shelter under eaves, quietly watching umbrellas bob like beetles. Every so often, a passerby scoffs. "What use is paper art?" they mutter. "Just a novelty." You don't answer. You just keep cutting. Because you know better than most, shadows can be truer than faces. There's a power in profile. It hides almost everything, yet reveals just enough. A proud chin, a sloped nose, a poised mouth. You've learned to read people not by what they show, but by what they offer when they think they're not being studied. And isn't that the essence of the Victorian city itself? So much hidden, So much hinted. You finish the day with a final cut, your own. You've done it 100 times before, and each one is different. Some days the lines are gentle, others sharp. You mount it on the wall beside the others, not for pride, but to remind yourself, even those who stay in the shadows deserve to be seen. The shell feels cool beneath your thumb, ridged and unassuming. But with your tools in hand and your eye steady, you begin to transform it. You're a cameo portrait carver, and this sliver of mollusk will soon become a woman's treasure. The material you use isn't just any shell. It's often bullmouth helmet or sardonyx, prized for its layered colouring, pale white atop burnt orange, or cream over slate grey. These strata are essential because your art lies in carving depth, each cut peeling away shadow to leave behind light. You sit near a window for the best light, loop over your eye, the air tinged with vinegar and beeswax. It takes hours to carve a single cameo, and most of that time is spent hunched, utterly still, breathing as shallowly as if your lungs might crack the shell. The customer, usually a woman of some means, provides a sketch, a miniature, or simply describes the subject. My daughter, just turned 16. She has kind eyes, and a braid she always wears over her left shoulder. From that you begin. First, the outline, then the slope of the neck, the arch of the brow, the hint of lips curved into restraint. You carve upwards, always towards the highest point of light, so the figure emerges like a ghost from the shell. In Victorian Britain, cameos are more than jewellery. They're memory, status, and mourning all at once. A bride might wear her mother's. A widow might commission her husband's in profile to wear close to the heart. You've carved Roman goddesses, anonymous beauties, even Queen Victoria herself, though always from a reference, never in person. The most touching ones, though, are the everyday faces, a midwife's late husband, a child lost to fever, a father remembered as young, and of course, lovers, so many lovers, each delicate curl of hair, each slope of nose, each lace collar painstakingly etched in low relief. It all speaks not just of form, but of feeling. At night you store your unfinished pieces in velvet-lined drawers, careful not to scratch the surface. A single slip can ruin days of work. You've seen carvers throw entire cameos into the fire over a single chipped eyelash or an uneven cheek. But you've also seen women cry when they hold the final piece in their palm. There's a moment, a hush, when they turn it over in the light, seeing the face of someone they love rise gently from the shell, as if time folded in on itself. That moment is what you carve for. Of course, the tools are never quite enough. You use steel gravers, needles, and scrapers. But your real tools are your patience, your memory, and your quiet obsession with light. A well-cut cameo doesn't just show a face, it glows. You've taken commissions from all corners of society. Once, a duchess brought you a scrap of ribbon and asked if you could mimic the way her brother wore it in his portrait. Another time, a coal merchant's wife paid you in monthly instalments for a cameo of her late child. You carved a single daisy into the background because she said he always picked them. Your workshop isn't grand. A small corner, a worn bench, the shell dust collecting in a shallow dish. But here, in this modest space, beauty is coaxed out of the sea. You've heard of factories trying to stamp cameos by machine. Soulless imitations, all identical, but customers always return. Too flat, they say, too lifeless. Because what you offer isn't a product, it's remembrance. Sometimes you find yourself humming as you work. Old hymns, street songs from your youth, or nothing at all, just the breath and scrape of shell beneath steel. It's meditative, healing even. You've never made a cameo of yourself. It feels too indulgent, too strange. But one day maybe someone will ask for it. A student perhaps, or a niece who remembers your fingers always smelled faintly of vinegar and dust. And if they do, if they carve your face with the same care, you hope they leave in the imperfections, the little tilt of your smile, the groove where your glasses sat, and the faintest flicker of joy in the corner of your mouth. Because more than anything, your cameos have always told the truth, softly, silently, and in profile. The heat shimmers off the pavement as you roll your cart into position. It's summer in London, what the newspapers call a scorcher, and children are already darting through the streets with sticky fingers and flushed cheeks. You're a penny lick seller, and today is going to be busy. Your tools are simple: a tin pail filled with freshly churned ice cream, a wide-handled scoop, and a box of thick glass cups, penny licks. They're heavy at the base, shallow at the top, just enough for a single bite or two. It doesn't look like much, but to most folks it's a tiny luxury that cools the tongue and sweetens the day. You call out, vanilla, lemon, just a penny. Mothers clutching baskets pause. Chimney boys drop their caps and rush over. A gentleman even tips his hat, handing you a coin for his daughter in lace gloves. You scoop, plop a dollop into the glass and hand it over. The child licks furiously, and when they finish, they hand the cup back, and you wipe it once with a damp rag before offering it to the next in line. Yes, it's not the most hygienic system, but this is the 1880s, and no one questions the penny lick, except the health inspectors. They've started muttering about disease. One article blamed penny licks for spreading cholera. Another called them dangerous vessels of consumption. You hear whispers of a ban. But for now, the law's still on your side, and your queue is proof that no one's worried. You keep moving between the parks, the markets, the bridges. In the heat, the ice cream starts to melt fast, but that's good for business. Better hurry, you say. Won't last long. Kids tug at sleeves, beg their mums. You sell 20 in a row before you even take a breath. As the sun climbs, so does your rhythm. Scoop, wipe, repeat. The glass gets slick in your fingers, and your cloth is damp through by midday. You sometimes swap it for a cleaner one tucked in your apron. But let's be honest, by the end of the day, every penny lick has kissed dozens of mouths. You don't think much of it, nor do your customers. For them, it's the joy that matters, the sharp chill of lemon, the slow melt of vanilla, the rare hint of strawberry if they're lucky. Ice cream isn't just a treat, it's a marvel. Cold, sweet, and exotic. Imagine tasting snow in summer. Of course, you hear the rumours that some sellers don't even wipe the glass between licks, that they reuse melted batches, that a penny lick might be your last. You roll your eyes. It's just a bit of cream and sugar, not a death sentence. Still, times are changing. You've started seeing paper-wrapped cones from Italy. No dish, no cloth, no waiting. The rich like them. Cleaner. Fancier. You're not sure how you feel about it. Part of you scoffs, but another part knows. Your days are numbered. Penny licks will soon be history. But for now, you still have regulars. The boy with the scuffed boots who always asks for just the edge. The woman who swears lemon cures her headaches. The couple who share a lick and blush. Every time. You'll keep rolling your cart as long as the sun shines. And maybe one day someone will remember you. Not your name, but the feel of warm glass in their hand and the taste of something cold and fleeting on their tongue. Something simple, something shared, something that for a single copper penny made a crowded city feel like a little moment of magic. And now, as the lamps dim across the cobbled lanes of your imagination, you feel the weight of the day settle like dust on old velvet. You've walked through alleys of gaslight and lace, heard the distant clack of scissors and the soft brush of sable on folding fans, You've sipped the smallest scoop of lemon ice from a reused glass, turned cameos in the palm of your hand, and watched a silhouette take shape in black paper like a whisper from the past. Victorian Britain wasn't just steam and soot. It was a world of quiet trades and curious hands, the unsung, the overlooked, people who carved their survival into shells and shadows, people who rang bells, carried jars, and sold songs on street corners. You didn't find them in history books or marble statues, but tonight they found a home in your memory. So take one last breath through that gaslit window. Listen to the soft scrape of chalk on slate, the clatter of a puppet show being packed away, the feathered hush of a duster brushing a velvet curtain. It's all fading now, like the final notes of a music box. You are warm, you are safe, and your journey, for now, is done.